Story recap here. Today I'm going to explain a fantasy and action film called The Princess. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. A princess wakes up and finds her hands shackled. She recalls being forced to drink something that made her sleep. She looks around and finds an open window that only leads to the ocean. She then checks the locked door but returns to bed when she hears men approaching. Two men enter the room and become tempted by the princess' presence. Thinking she's still asleep, one man goes near her, but she suddenly headbutts him. Raising from her bed, she breaks her thumb to slip the shackles of one hand and slams the chain across the man's face. He throws her down, but she kicks his legs, desperately trying to escape. When he grabs her, she removes a hairpin and stabs it in his eye, ramming it further until he dies. The other man corners her, so she grabs her hairpin and stabs it on his leg and arm. However, he lifts her, so she swings her chain against his head. He tries to strangle her with her chain, but the princess pulls back and throws punches before kicking him off the tower. Hearing another man arriving, the princess hits him with a sledgehammer. Finally, she unlocks her shackles and stages the room before she escapes. Quietly, she reaches a bathroom and, from the window, finds her family chained in the courtyard while the castle is being locked down. Julius approaches the royal family with his loyal guard, Moira, by his side. The king tries to reason that Julius' father was a diplomat who would disapprove of his actions, but Julius believes his father and the king are weak pacifists. The queen argues that they trusted him, while her younger daughter, Violet, snaps that Julius can never have her sister. Julius insists that he gets what he wants, so Violet spits at his face. Moira flings her whip just by the princess' head, capturing the man kneeling behind her. The woman orders a little princess to obey before releasing the man. Julius blames the king for his daughter's behaviors. He accuses him of trampling their traditions and welcoming outsiders instead of conquering them. The king argues that one cannot rule with fear alone, but Julius insists that the people crave strength on the throne, which they will now have in him. His soldiers escort the royal family out while the princess watches. Blaming herself, she recalls being forced to marry Julius to provide an heir to their kingdom. Back then, Julius acted accommodatingly to the royal family, as the union would make him the kingdom's ruler. However, the princess wasn't happy, so she ran away before they could finish the ceremony. Suddenly, a soldier enters the room, so the princess submerges herself into the bathtub to hide. From her small movements, bubbles pop, catching the man's attention. Thankfully, he doesn't see her due to his helmet. After he leaves, the princess gets out of the water, rips her soaked dress, and leaves. She sneaks across hallways, avoiding soldiers she hears from afar. Suddenly, the soldier from earlier catches her and chokes her. She punches his arm, but this doesn't make him flinch. Instead, she slams both hands on his helmet, making it ring, so he releases her. She lands a kick on his crotch, but it doesn't faze him too, much to her disappointment. Forced to fight, the princess dodges his sword and kicks it off his grasp. He grabs her by the neck, so she rams his helmet against the wall to escape. He then rushes towards her like a raging bull, so she climbs the wall and lands on his shoulder, twisting the helmet to blind him. The man tries to slam her against the wall, but the princess takes his helmet and stabs him with its horns before slamming it against his head, killing him. Looking at the bloody mess, she recalls her teacher, Lin, who taught her that being a true warrior lies in what she's fighting for. The queen commented that Lin was supposed to teach the princess etiquette, but Lin insisted that she could learn both etiquette and fighting. In the courtyard, soldiers find the man who fell from the tower. This makes Julius wonder about the princess, so he orders one of his men, Kerr, to investigate. But Kerr orders another soldier to check the princess. Meanwhile, the princess hides in the knitting room and rips her bridal gown to move easier. However, two soldiers arrive, so she stabs one of them. Facing the second soldier, the princess takes lace from her dress and uses it to bind him. She takes a crossbow and demands to know what Julius did to her family. When the man questions if she knows how to use the crossbow, she turns back and shoots his comrade, killing him. Despite this, the man continues to defy the princess, so she shoots an arrow above his head. Giving him one last chance, she asks him again, but he yells at her, so she shoots an arrow into his neck. Victorious, the princess takes a sword and leaves. She heads downstairs but finds soldiers coming up, so she climbs out the window. Hanging over the ledge to avoid them, she's forced to drop the heavy sword to keep herself from falling. When she climbs up, the soldier Kerr ordered to check on her sitting by the window, exhausted from climbing up the tower. Through gritted teeth, the princess hangs on until the man gets up, and she climbs back inside the tower. Going into a secret passage, the princess finds the dining training hall full of soldiers collecting treasures. With the men drunk and busy, the princess sneaks around them until she reaches another secret passage. From there, she reaches her bedroom to retrieve a sword. She recalls her training with Lin, who urged her to focus and fight with her heart. Lin's uncle and the king's advisor, Kai, arrived, so she faced both of them in a sword fight. The princess held her own until Kai swiftly knocked the sword off her hand and threw her off. Despite this, the princess charged toward them and disarmed Kai. She then threw him back, convincing the man that the princess has a warrior's heart. To honor her as a warrior, Kai gave her the sword, which is now in her hands. Determined, the princess retrieves her gear from under the bed before returning to the secret passage. While heading out, she overhears Julius and Moira talking about wedding preparations. Moira asks him why he can't take the throne forcefully, but Julius tells her that no one can question his coronation if he does it through tradition. The two then make out, so the princess positions herself to stab them through the wall. However, Julius' soldier interrupts them, announcing that the king wants to speak to them. Meanwhile, the tired soldier finally reaches the room where the princess is supposed to be. Too exhausted to bother, he peeks into the room and finds someone on the bed and a sleeping soldier on the chair nearby. This convinces him that all is well, not knowing that the men are dead, including the one on the princess' bed. Julius and Moira meet the king, who warns Julius that taking the crown will only ruin his image to the people. This makes Julius question if the king only takes orders from others. However, the king insists that they all serve the people, and treason will only lead to more bloodshed. Julius stresses that the wedding is not an act of treason. Meanwhile, the princess crawls out from a vent, finding herself under a knight's armor. Thinking it's just decorative, she continues to crawl out, only for the knight to stab her dress. Quickly, the princess kicks his sword and dodges his attacks. She strikes him, but the armor protects her opponent. Still, the princess relentlessly attacks until she stabs him under the arm, finding a weak point in his armor. The princess aims her sword into the armor's weak points, then throws an oil lamp at him. The knight laughs until the princess throws a candle on him, setting him ablaze. In the courtyard, the tired soldier assures Julius that the princess is still asleep. However, the burning knight suddenly falls off the castle. Seeing this, Julius grabs Kerr and orders him to deal with the situation. After Julius leaves, Kerr orders his men to search the castle. However, Moira stops them, confirming to the tired soldier that he didn't see the knight on his way down. She believes that they're dealing with someone who knows the palace well. Kerr doesn't take her seriously, seeing her only as Julius' harlot. Because of this, she lashes her whip, stabbing its blade through his throat. Scared, the others hurry into the castle under her command. Seeing this, the princess hurries away, but finds soldiers everywhere. 3 men corner her, so she dodges their attacks and deals with them one by one. Still, more men rush upstairs, so the princess rips off her necklace and uses the beads to trip them. She steps on their shields on her way down and easily ties up the next man who attacks her before throwing him over. More men arrive, so she kicks them down. One by one, the men try to capture the princess, but her sword and quick wits defeat them. A man with a warhammer strikes, so she uses a dead soldier's shield to block him and break his foot. The princess then stabs him in the torso, but he chokes her against the wall. He pulls her sword from his body, but this allows her to stab him through the chin. A soldier reminds the men that they need the princess alive, so they hesitate in attacking. She steals another sword and kills the man while dealing with multiple injuries. As the princess is weakened, the soldiers corner her, so she throws herself off the ledge, using another man's body to cushion her fall. Another man jumps to follow her, so she blocks his attack and stabs him in the leg. She heads further downstairs, only to find the tired soldier making his way up, but he doesn't even notice her. The soldiers surround her, so she leaps out the window, holding onto a tapestry, and swings herself into a room. She then hides behind curtains to tend to her wounds. During this, the princess recalls the king and queen discussing her marriage to provide the kingdom an heir. The queen was against this, but the king stressed that they didn't have a son to inherit the throne. The princess stepped in and offered herself to be trained as a knight instead so she could inherit the throne. The king was unaware of her training, so he stressed that he couldn't send her to die in war. Spitefully, the princess hinted that he'd send her to a stranger's bed instead. She insisted that she wasn't property to be traded, but the king reminded her to do her duty. The princess snaps out of the memory as someone enters the room. She immediately lunges at the visitor, only to find that it's Lin. Seeing her wounded, Lin tends to the princess and tells her that the royal family is in the keep. To get there, they later head to the kitchen but find it full of soldiers. Soon, the soldiers are called in to find the princess, but some stay behind to corner a female cook. Together, Lin and the princess free the cook and face the soldiers. While the princess handles two men, Lin easily knocks down the other. Soon, the three corner them, so the princess throws a pot of soup on one while they deal with the others. Lin easily knocks her opponent down and saves the princess. The princess stabs her enemy while Lin kills hers. The third man charges at the princess, but Moira pulls him with her whip so she can face the princess. She berates the young woman for making such a mess and advises her to be the meek little princess she's meant to be, but the princess refuses. Moira lashes her whips at the two, which they block with their swords. She captures Lin's wrist and throws her down, so the princess goes to her aid. However, Moira wraps her whip around her throat and hangs her over the kitchen. Lin desperately tries to save the princess, but Moira blocks her. Finally, she lands a kick across Moira's face, then throws a pot of oil into the fireplace, setting the kitchen ablaze to block Moira's path. Lin then leads the princess to the sewers while she holds Moira off. The princess crawls into the sewers and reaches the keep, where she finds the guards drinking. She grabs their cup and drinks with them before attacking. The princess easily knocks them down and steals a sword, defeating them all while her family watches with pride. Before they can leave, however, someone knocks the princess out. The princess wakes up in a room with her family and Lin chained. Julius scolds her for the mess she made, but the princess bites his hand in retaliation. He slaps her and calls her an oddity. Julius stresses that she was born to be his wife, so she tells him that she looks forward to it. She threatens that when they're married, he'll have to sleep with one eye open because she'll be plotting to kill him every day and night. Given that she's still unruly, Julius chooses to wed Violet instead and orders Moira to kill the princess. The princess kicks a soldier's sword to swing against Moira. While she fights, Lin grabs Violet and takes her away. The soldier then throws the princess into a window, making her fall off the tower and into the water. As she sinks, the princess recalls her training and the times her strength was questioned. Remembering what Julius intends to do to her little sister, the princess wakes up, recalling what she's fighting for. Using a fallen shard, she releases her hands from their bindings and swims to the surface. During this, Julius prepares his wedding with the king, queen, and other noble guests to witness. While his men search for Violet, the princess returns to the castle but gets blocked by a soldier. Fortunately, Violet pushes a statue to topple over him, and the princess happily reunites with her and Lin. They head to a storehouse where they arm themselves for battle. Violet also marvels at the weaponry, inspiring her to fight as well. Seeing her younger self and her sister, the princess advises her to stay, promising to train her after everything is over. Outside, Lin and the princess battle Julius soldiers. Lin shoots arrows at the oncoming soldiers, then switches to blades to save the cornered princess. With more men arriving, they rush to hide. Meanwhile, Violet sneaks into the church to give Kai a sword. However, Julius notices this and catches her. The princess and Lin battle against armored knights, aiming at their joints, including one man's crotch. Seeing Violet captured, they fight towards the church, where Julius forces a priest to marry him and Violet. The princess throws a sword into a man, allowing Lin to enter the church. At the entrance, Moira orders her men to kill Lin, so they gather around her while Moira deals with the princess. Seeing the commotion, Kai tells the guests to escape, thus interrupting the wedding. The princess fights Moira while Lin and Kai deal with the soldiers. She dodges Moira's whips until the woman wraps her whip around her sword. Inside, the king tries to attack Julius but fails and gets wounded. With his injury, his crown falls, but Lin attacks Julius before he can take it. Meanwhile, Moira knocks the princess back and steals her sword. Still, the princess lunges at her, landing punches before wrapping Moira's whip around her neck. She then uses the whip's blade to stab her before hanging her to death. More soldiers attack Lin, allowing Julius to stab her. The princess rushes inside, weeping as she sees Lin fall. With that, Julius grabs the crown and places it on his head. The princess faces Julius while her family gets to safety. The two block each other's attacks as Julius recounts how her parents wept when she was born because she wasn't a man. The princess returns the insult, hinting that his father cried because Julius wasn't a man either. As she blocks his attacks, Julius stabs her with a dagger. Wounded, the princess limps away as Julius strikes her again. With the people watching, Julius throws her out in the courtyard to present the ruined princess kneeling before the new king. As he declares his power over them, the princess recalls Lin's advice, gathering her patience and focus. When Julius looks away, the princess swiftly steals the sword and cuts off his head. Julius' head falls to the ground, along with the king's crown. Finally, the princess takes the crown and returns it to her father. Having seen her daughter's strength, the king orders the people to ring the bells until midnight as the heir to the kingdom has been born. Surprised, the princess kneels before the king, who finally knights her in front of their people. He then declares that the princesses of their kingdom will now determine their fates, just as his daughter has done. With that, the king declares her the future leader of the kingdom. The people rejoice, and the princess rushes to Lin, happy to see her alive. Meanwhile, the tired soldier finally reaches the courtyard. Unaware of the events, he shouts as he finally finds the princess.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.